This is not just a love story, it is a story that encompasses family, food, friendship, and love. In the opening scene of Welcome to Mama's, we see Amy being dropped off by her father. Mama and her husband always help Amy's father raise her after she lost her own mother. The first scene of the movie shows the typical love and bond between Amy and Mama. At the restaurant, Amy helps Mama cook while they both talk. Later that night, Mama appreciates those who are present for her family dinner on Friday. It is a tradition Mama took from her Nana. She tells them that everyone sitting is now part of the family, and they all cheer for one another and start eating. All the memories with Mama are what Amy remembers years later, when she is looking at the pasta that is to be served to a customer at the restaurant where she is working. Christine calls her out of her thoughts to take the pasta. Amy then complains that she used to be bold and full of life, but she feels her current self is stuck in a position that she doesn't like. Amy wants a new challenge, and Christine also encourages and agrees with her point. Amy believes if things do not change for her very soon, she will have to quit because she is tired of being the assistant manager. She is also worried about Mama's restaurant, as it has been a while since she checked up on Mama. A few minutes into their discussion, a meeting is called in the office to announce the new manager. Amy and Christine are both excited, believing Amy will get selected for the position. But to their surprise, someone from a different branch is the new manager of the restaurant. Annie is disappointed and feels like she has been cheated. Another scene shows Frank in Mama's kitchen, making a dessert for Kimberly. Kimberly writes reviews for restaurants based on what she feels, and her ratings can determine people's judgments of the restaurant. Frank is hoping Kimberly will like his food, and wants to hear the first review firsthand from her. He insists on serving Kimberly herself, despite Sal trying to get it from his hands. Frank takes the dessert to her. However, Kimberly is not impressed by what she is tasting. Frank pushes her to know how she feels about the dessert. Even though she is not supposed to share her review, she mentions that the dessert is a little dry. This shatters the heart of Frank, who thinks he made the best dessert, but he tries to hide his disappointment. Amy approaches her boss, who tells her to be the guide for the new manager, since she has been in the restaurant for a while. Meanwhile, Amy resigns, because she has decided not to stay if she does not get the promotion. Amy walks with Christine, celebrating that she feels liberated after quitting her job, but also scared about what is ahead, because she does not have anything planned. She reminds her how she has been saving for this moment, and that she should leave her life for her destiny. While still talking, she receives a call, and Christine feels it is destiny that is calling Amy already. Amy picks up the call and hears that Mama has passed away, and the lawyer explains that Amy will need to come over to his place so that she can hear her will. Amy is heartbroken that her surrogate mother is deceased. Frank is in the office, refreshing the system to see Kimberly's review of his food. Sal interrupts him and asks him to stop refreshing the browser. When he says he is letting go, he sees the review. At first, the beginning of the review looks like a good one for Frank. But seeing the later part, Frank is confused. The review says there is a missing ingredient, like love, in Frank's cooking, and this confuses him. Sal explains that Kimberly's review will either make their customer base move up or down. Frank is afraid the review from Kimberly will hurt the restaurant. He then receives a call from the same lawyer, who informs him that Mama is deceased, and he should also come and listen to Mama's will. Frank is heartbroken as well. On the set day, the lawyer asks them to come, and Amy decides to get something to eat at a store. Frank also comes to the store to order the same thing, but Amy has gotten the last one. Amy then engages Frank in a conversation, because they order the same drink. Frank explains it is a friend of his that introduces him to it. Frank has not been looking at Amy since the beginning of the conversation. But once he looks up and sees how beautiful Amy is, he adjusts himself and introduces himself as Chef Frank. He plans to ask Amy out, but the sight of his face at the back of the newspaper Amy is reading breaks his spirit. The review from Kimberly is in the paper, and Frank does not want Amy to see it. He starts behaving irrationally, to the extent that Amy has to leave her food and newspaper for him as she leaves. Frank is happy she was not able to see the review. At the lawyer's office, Frank enters a bit late, and he is surprised to see Amy sitting down. Amy is also surprised that it is Frank they are waiting for. Amy realizes Frank is the head chef at Mama's restaurant, and Frank also learns how close Amy is to Mama. The lawyer then continues to read Mama's will, which indicates that Mama's restaurant is willed to Amy, and that the chef position is given to Frank to handle. The lawyer also hands over Mama's recipe to Amy. The next day, Amy is at the entrance of the restaurant when Frank gets there. Frank had thought he would take over Mama's restaurant one day, but now he believes it is not his destiny. However, Amy believes she can make this work with Frank, since they are both close to Mama. As they enter the restaurant, memories Amy had in Mama's restaurant come to her, and she feels alive, although she is furious about the new design she is seeing. Amy and Frank start arguing about how Frank designed sales, dishes, and everything else in Mama's restaurant in the past. Amy plans to revamp the restaurant back to standard before thinking about moving on, which surprises Frank, because he thought she would stay, but Amy is not sure she will, so she deflects to another subject. Amy then concludes that they will use the inheritance Mama left to bring the restaurant back to its best standard. She wants to hand over Mama's recipe book to Frank, but he gives it back to her as he steps away. Christine and Amy are baking, which Christine says can help her have a soft landing at her restaurant. Amy, on the other hand, does not like the sound of being called the owner of Mama's restaurant. Christine calls it destiny, but she is afraid she might not be able to meet Mama's standards. She explains that Mama put her heart into the restaurant, and is not sure if she can also put her mind to it as much as Mama did. Frank, in the kitchen, talking with his friend Sal, explains how he had seen Amy long before they met at the lawyer's place. Sal then knows Frank flirted with her, which explains one of his fears. He is not sure if he will stay, even though he knows Mama wants him to. Amy comes into the restaurant to introduce herself as the new owner of the restaurant. She brings the biscotti she baked with Christine as a peace offering, but no one is ready to eat out of it. She then asks everyone what they do in the restaurant. Amy assigns various duties to everyone as she encourages them to do the work to honor the memory of Mama. She reveals that they will have a soft reopening before the grand reopening, as the money left by Mama will be used to revamp the restaurant. Only Sal takes one of the biscotti, and she assures Amy everyone will come around. In the office, Amy starts reading Mama's recipe. Every recipe has a story behind it. The first recipe Amy has read is about Mama's husband's favorite dish. Papa always believes the key to perfect sauce is to go easy on the seasoning, but go great on confidence. The scene then shows Papa tasting Mama's food, and also encouraging Mama to open her dream restaurant. She takes Papa to a place in the house specially arranged to have a date with one another. This is where Mama shares the ideal view of the restaurant she wants, and Papa assures her that one day, he will give her that view. Frank is passing by, and Amy calls him to explain that each recipe of Mama's has a story, and she wants to suggest they start the restaurant by taking initiative from the book and replicating the original cooking style of Mama. Frank is hesitant, but while they are talking, Amy wants him to trust her. Frank also wants Amy to trust him with the menu, but Amy is not sure of it yet. They both decide to give one another a chance, and this brings excitement for Frank as he heads to the kitchen. Christine and Amy have a movie night. She asks Amy how her day one is, and Amy then reveals that she and Mama had a big fallout, which is why there was no communication between them for a long time before she passed. Amy is wondering why Mama would leave her the restaurant, despite the fight they had. In the next scene, everyone is working based on Amy's instructions as they get the restaurant back in shape for a soft opening, aside from Frank, who is playing the arcade game in the restaurant. Amy, however, interrupts and seeks a favor from him. The favor is that Frank should recreate Mama's classic food. After much persuasion from Amy, Frank agrees to think about it. They plan to do the food sampling for dinner in the next 2 hours. 2 hours later, Frank brings different dishes to the table as Mama's new menu. Amy does not go right into dishes, as she was looking for Mama's pen. When Frank directs her to Mama's pen, Amy eats it, but complains of the hotness. Frank tries to explain the recipe as a little bit of Mama's classic, and that of his own, which is a combination of old and new. Amy then questions Frank about how Mama hired him, but Frank deflects and does not answer the question. Frank does not like the way Amy is being picky about the food he serves her, which makes him feel like she is against the menu. Even though she disagrees, she invites him for a drink. Getting to the restaurant, Amy orders a drink. The waiter brings 3 cups of wine. While Frank is tasting the wine, Amy keeps explaining how important each wine is, and telling him why Mama chooses each of them for different occasions. Amy believes they should honor Mama's memory by doing things exactly the way Mama has been doing them, but she feels Frank is not on board with her. This suggests that Amy is staying. Amy also takes Frank to another location. It is Mama and Papa's first apartment in the state. Amy then shows Frank that Mama's restaurant will be 50 years old in the next 2 weeks, and wishes the soft opening to be on the same date. Frank does not like the idea, because quite a few things are not ready, but Amy assures him that it will only require more work. While they are discussing it, Frank receives a call from a restaurant inviting him for an interview. He steps back to receive the call, and he agrees to attend the interview. Back at Mama's restaurant, Frank explains Amy's plan to Sal, and also tells her about the interview he is having, meaning if everything goes well, Frank might be leaving the restaurant soon. Amy also comes to announce that they will need to bring the soft opening forward to mark the 50th anniversary of Mama's opening. She plans to bring in more teams to help out so that they can achieve their goal. Frank and Amy are also able to agree that they are family and should be friends. Amy agrees to compromise by having both old and new recipes on the menu. She then hands over Mama's recipe to Frank. Finally, Amy tells everyone to go home and rest well, as work starts fully the next day. The next day, arrangements for the soft launch start in full swing as Amy leads the team in creating the kind of design she feels suits Mama's restaurant more. Amy also interviews based on Mama's standards. Frank, on the other hand, starts using Mama's recipe and starts practicing with it. After a while, Amy sees that Frank has been busy and decides to bring him home and cook for him. She asks Frank for help, and while she is about to start, Frank sees he needs to join in the cooking, and they both start cooking one of Mama's recipes. As they talk, she asks him the last thing he said to Mama. Frank says he told Mama not to eat too much nakai. He asks her the same question, but a call from the restaurant interrupts them, informing them that there has been an accident in the kitchen and the cooker is damaged. The next day they remove what is damaged from the stove. But Frank is worried they might not find it in the market and suggests they change the whole cooker. Amy does not want to change it, but believes they will find the damaged parts in the market. Frank agrees, and Sal notices that Frank did not put up much of a fight to win the argument. He reveals to Sal that he is trying to be a team player, and he wants to get his recipe on the list during the soft opening. Sal, however, feels there is more to it than Frank is talking about. Later, Amy is back in her office, and she reads another of Mama's recipes. The story behind the recipe is when Mama and Papa meet an accountant to help them seek an investor. Even though they do not have money to pay the accountant, Papa offers to help the accountant with some other duties, and do those duties during his free time for work, while the accountant helps to get them an investor that will start Mama's restaurant. The next day, Frank is reading the recipe while taking a drink in Mama and Papa's favorite spot, the terrace with the open view. The story behind it is when Papa creates his first date on the rooftop with Mama, they confess their love to one another, and they both keep going to the same spot every year until Papa's demise. Amy joins him, but she is not feeling too good, because it has been a while since she has been there. Frank suggests that they go ahead and get the spark module that got damaged in the stove, but they will take a quick detour first, and Amy agrees. Frank plans on celebrating Mama and Papa's anniversary by taking Amy to their favorite spot. While visiting one of the locations, Frank asks Amy again about the last thing she said to Mama, and she shares her not-so-proud experience. She explains that she tries to help Mama's restaurant by setting up a side location at Mama and Papa's favorite spot, but Mama does not take it well. Frank reveals that Mama has forgiven her as she often talks about her. Frank takes Amy to another location, where she sees a plank with a friend inscription, and Amy picks it because it signifies trust between her and Frank. Frank finally takes her to the last spot. This is where Mama and Papa go after their marriage. Papa had encouraged Mama to let go of all her worries by holding a stone and throwing it in the ocean. Frank then tells Amy to do the same thing to feel better. Walking back to Amy's house at night, she appreciates Frank for the day, and also asks if he was trying to ask her out when they first met. Frank did not answer the question, but Amy says she might have agreed if he had tried to ask her out as she entered her house. The next day, while everyone is making sure they are ready for the launch, Amy is reading Mama's recipe book, and she sees another early memory of Mama and Papa. Christine comes in, and Amy is explaining how Mama and Papa got together. While Christine is asking questions, Amy realizes Frank took her on a date the previous day without her knowing they were on a date, just like Mama took Papa on a date without him knowing. When Christine leaves, a customer comes in to take one of Frank's specials, and mentions the review made by Kimberly. Amy does not know about Kimberly's review, but after the incident, she decides to check, and she is furious that she did not know about it while she was talking to Christine. Christine believes she would not have given Frank the chance if she had seen the review. The next day, during the launch, Amy dispatches everyone to their duty and gives Frank the menu. Frank starts preparing without looking at the prep sheet Amy created. Later, Sal calls his attention to the menu. But this is after he has prepared so many meals which include both his recipe and Mama's recipe. This is when he realizes that the menu indicates that they will be serving only Mama's classic. This makes him furious. A few minutes later, Frank challenges Amy. She reveals that she changed her mind about the menu because of Kimberly's review. She walks out on Frank in the presence of everyone because she believes Frank has broken her trust. While Mama's grand opening is coming ahead, Frank is making up his mind to go for his interview so he can do his cooking without interruption. Sal tries to convince him to stay and speak with Amy, but he refuses because he feels it is more than that. Amy, on the other hand, is in her office reading Mama's recipe. The story behind this is when Amy herself tells Mama she has been offered a job, and she is expecting Mama to be angry with her, but instead Mama advises her to take the job, because she is happy for her. Amy and Mama took a picture that day, and Mama printed the picture. Amy then sees another recipe that talks about moving forward for Mama. The story behind this is how Mama employed Frank. Mama employs him because of his honesty, and because Frank wants people to feel like family when they eat his food, which Mama likes about him. Amy also sees that Mama opens the door for moving ahead with recipes from Frank, and it is Mama who gives Frank the sheet to write his menu on her board, after she is sure Frank is ready. Christine enters Amy's office, but Amy is not listening to her because she feels she has failed Mama again, as she has been doing it all wrong. The next day, Amy tries to address the whole staff to make the announcement. But Frank is not present because he has gone for an interview, which Amy is not aware of. Amy then announces that Frank's menu will be incorporated back into the menu. Sal informs Christine about Frank's interview, but they all decide not to tell Amy. Instead, they call Frank to meet Amy at the location they told her he was at. Frank sneaks to the market after seeing Amy. When she sees him, he acts as if he is surprised. Amy apologizes for not giving him the chance and says that she has been doing it all wrong. She explains that she saw his recipe in Mama's book, which makes her understand what Mama wants. Amy would like to move forward with his menu, making him happy. She apologizes for the issue that happened during the soft opening and asks if they could still be friends. Frank accepts the friendship. Back at Mama's restaurant, Amy finishes Mama's recipe, and while closing the book, she sees a letter and opens it. The letter contains a heartfelt message from Mama to Amy. Mama was advised by Frank to write a letter to her, since she misses her and does not know how to reach out to her. Mama takes Frank's advice and writes the letter. This is the best closure Amy has had since the demise of Mama, and she is glad to read the letter. Amy rushes to meet Frank outside the restaurant, to thank him for telling Mama to write a letter. While Amy moves closer, a romantic tension is building between her and Frank. The owner of the restaurant Frank is interviewing at calls, interrupting them. Sadly, Amy finally knows that Frank is planning to leave Mama's restaurant. The grand opening is here. Amy invites everyone in to enjoy their meal and asks them to also be open because they will introduce some new meals. Frank, in the kitchen, is also feeling excited, and his meal is coming out great, like it used to be with Mama. Sal does not want Frank to leave, but he does not want Sal to bring up the story. Sal advises Frank to tell Amy how he feels before leaving, and Frank starts considering it. Frank and Amy collide, and they both apologize to one another. Frank wants to talk about his leaving, but Amy cuts in, saying they will find a way to cover it. However, she is happy for him. Unfortunately, he is not able to tell her how he feels before she leaves him for the restaurant. Every guest present for the grand opening is sitting on a round table, like a family dinner. Kimberly also comes. Frank sights her and walks up to her. Kimberly tells him she is there to see if he has found his missing ingredient. Everyone sits down, including Frank, as Amy raises a toast to the family. After this, they eat and enjoy themselves. Some minutes after the dinner, Amy sees that Kimberly has released her review, and the review this time around is that Mama's restaurant has found the missing ingredient, and she gives them a perfect rating, which is great for their business. Amy asks for Frank, but he is missing, and Sal gives an excuse for him. Frank comes back and asks Christine to help him show something to Amy. Amy sees the letter and knows where to meet Frank. She is surprised to see that Frank has arranged a date for them. He explains that he picked up some tips from Papa. He plays a song and invites Amy to dance. While dancing, Frank explains that he did want to ask her out when they first met. He then appreciates her because she has helped him find his passion by making him stay with the memory of Mama instead of running away from it. Amy makes him an offer to be co-owner. Frank reveals that he has decided to turn down the job. The job might have been the best thing that has ever happened to him, but he has realized the best thing is right in front of him, which is Amy. They kiss passionately and decide to carry on Mama's legacy together.